welcome to my talk. The technology's working, fancy that. Just talking to the tech guys here, and they managed to get a temporary rig for the captain's talk, and it took them about 4 hours then to put a new cable all the way up from here up to there. So now's a good time, as I always do actually, but particularly on this occasion, to thank all the backstage people, technicians who look after us. There's a lot goes into this, as you can appreciate. Many thanks, you guys. You solved the problem. It's only right I clap as well. Now, the other thing before we start the Heathrow talk, which is a great one, I love it actually. It's the first time I've shown it, so it'll be nice to see what you think of it. But before I forget, what we're now going to do is the last talk will now be the one you should have seen yesterday, because the one you should have seen yesterday is navigating ships, and I've had so many people you're all wonderful, you all come and talk to me and I'll get feedback, and that's lovely from our point of view. It can be a very lonely life as a presenter, funnily enough, believe it or not. So it's lovely to have people come and talk and tell you this, that, or the other, or say they enjoyed it. But anyway, this animation CD, don't get me wrong here, I do enough marketing, and I'm not here to market our products, far from it. But those of you who are interested, it's got these 370 animations, it's got a US voice and the US system of navigation, because it changes like the charts and so on. And it's also got British voice, BBC guy actually, or retired BBC guy. And they're going to be in the shop. They are in the shop now. And I will be there for an hour today when this finishes. And I'll also be there tomorrow morning at 11:30 for an hour. And then I'll be there when the last talk as well. So just to and I'll have my laptop there. So if you want to come and play around with it and see it properly like you would on your own laptop, that would be great. But you will be seeing some of these clips on the last talk. So welcome to Heathrow, the magic, I've forgotten the title now, the magic of air traffic control at Heathrow. Very interesting place to work. I worked there for 7, 8 years. In fact, to the previous speaker, I was sitting watching, who I'm still laughing actually, because I lived in Doncaster too for a while, and I know Finningley very well. And as he says, it's now Robin Hood Airport. But there's nothing finer than Heathrow. There are other airports in the world. Heathrow's, well, I won't spoil it, you'll see it, but Heathrow's a big airport now. I worked there 20 years ago, I suppose, and the traffic is 3 times higher than it was now, than it was when I was there. So let's have a look at it. First of all, I like to show that one because that's the early days of civil aviation, what was known as Imperial Air. We're obviously talking about British aircraft, and of course throughout the world, in America, they had their own aviation industry in the early days, the pioneers, and we know all about the people who crossed the Atlantic, Solo and Amy Johnson, etc., etc. But that's a nice one to start off with. That's actually Croydon, and Croydon Tower still exists, although there are offices around it. The actual tower bit there this bit is still there, but these are all sort of offices filled with computers and things. That's the original tower, and Croydon was the major airport for London in the 30s, late 20s into the 30s, and indeed the 40s, till the war came. And then, of course, we had airfields built all over the place, like Finningley was mentioned. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a feel. Now, Heathrow itself, you probably won't, I'll try and point out 1 or 2 things here without falling off the stage. Vessel is rolling easily this morning. That's what we would put in the logbook on the bridge, even if finishing your watch. The script, vessel rolling easily. Very nice, isn't it? Rock us to sleep. Don't go to sleep yet now. This is the area here. This is an old Ordnance survey map that I got hold of, and you can see a place here called Heathrow Hall. And there's a pub there, the Magpies. That was there till about 10 years ago, believe it or not. And you've got here the London to Bath Road, known as the A4. Okay? And this is all, of course, Heathrow Airport now. So it was originally called Heath Space Row. And it was all a sandy heath land. One thing I have to say of interest, a lot of highwaymen were very active. This is like a few miles out of London. Coaches are The coaches along here were enormous, all right? It was a main route to Bath and Bristol and so on. Great place for the highwaymen. And you've heard of Dick Turpin, I'm sure, some of you. He used to operate around here. And there was also, would you believe, a lady highway woman operated around here, right? And she was known as Moll Cutpurse. I love the name. Moll Cutpurse. Equal opportunities in those days, you see. Yeah? We talk about it now, but they had it in those days. She was a highwayman. Anyway, they, of course, were caught around this area, taken to Tyburn, which is sort of near Marble Arch, Tyburn Tree area, and hung. And then they brought the remains back here. So both Dick Turpin and Moll Cutpurse, were then exhibited to warn other people not to do this horrible thing. And they actually, that was around where Terminal 5 is. So next time you go to Terminal 5, remember those people. It's quite funny, really. Okay. That was the original tower, a typical sort of RAF-type tower, because it was originally RAF. Sorry, no, I'll come back a stage. It was something, I missed to say something here. There was an airfield before the war here, as you can see, Heathrow Aerodrome, which was owned by a company called Fairey Aviation. Okay, and they built various aircraft there. So, that was the beginning. That was from about 1920s until what we knew as London Airport, as it was called originally, took over. So that was a tower. And of course, we were getting near the Second World War here, and there were Lancasters used to fly in and out there, ferrying troops. You know what the wartime was like, and American aircraft, of course, Boeings and so on, the early ones, bringing the troops back and forward and whatever they were doing. And it operated for quite a few years like that. That tower is now gone. Just another map here. You can see the layout of what became the runways. We'll come into this a little more detail. But that was the early planned layout for London Airport. There's an area here called Perry Oaks, and the sewage works here. That's all gone now, and that is all Terminal 5. All right? And, the highwaymen were put there, so that all about up here, actually, in the Terminal 5 approach road area on display. Not a nice thought. Air traffic control, that was it in 1948. It was obviously very basic. And I worked there from the 70s. And there's actually one lady here, that person, who was just about retiring when I started there. Hello, what have I done? So that's interesting. Very basic. It was just voice communication and a few dials and knobs and things. But it served the purpose then for what it was doing. Then we get to 1950. Well, by 1950, I hope you can all see here because it's terrible when you block the view. By 1950, we had the two main runways built, here and here. And obviously, there were plans that, don't worry about this here. In fact, no, it is worth me mentioning this. You've got Northolt up here, just above the map. But this bit here is where there were thoughts of having a third runway at Heathrow. And I'll come back to that. Basically, it's a terrible idea, okay? As you will see. And I speak as a professional, not a politician, or an accountant, or a finance person. I speak as a previous working air traffic controller, and I know what the traffic's like, and you'll see that. It then developed into that, about the mid-50s, and this is when I first got involved with Heathrow. As I mentioned the other day, my auntie worked for an airline in Ireland, Aer Lingus. No bones about saying that, wonderful airline. And she worked with Aer Lingus from 1937, when Aer Lingus had one aircraft and a biscuit tin full of spares. All right? And she was the school's liaison officer. She used to go around Ireland encouraging people to fly. That was my auntie, my dad's sister. Very proud of my auntie Ivy. And she really sparked my interest because we lived in Wembley and we used to come here and all this lot wasn't built. Well, the runway system was there, but the central area wasn't built then. And there were tented accommodation, London Airport North. All right? And we used to have silver service there too. And later on, when they built the tower and everything here, And she'd fly over, because she used to fly for 10% of whatever it cost, because she was an airline employee. So she'd come from Dublin from the afternoon in a Viscount, or earlier in a Dakota. And we'd watch through a wire fence here all these old aircraft, like that, old Transworld aircraft, with Pratt & Whitney engine. I was talking to somebody the other day from Pratt & Whitney. There's a lot of rivalry between Pratt & Whitney and Rolls-Royce and General Electric. I'm a bit biased because my son-in-law works for Rolls-Royce in Indianapolis. Anyway, these were the kind of aircraft I began to see, when I was 8, 9 or whatever, I never got a chance to see that, but in 1955, that was the air traffic control system. We had early radars. Well, we got them in the Second World War. Radar, by the way, stands for Radio Detection and Ranging. And that was, wars are terrible things. There are some advantages, and radar was one of them. Okay, and again, you'll get more of that in this navigating ships talk as well. There's another lovely Boeing Stratocruiser, Pan Am. Wonderful company, Pan Am. No longer exists now. Then we got the central area, and this was my office up here, and also this floor here. I'll be telling you about that. That's what's known as aerodrome. My hand's shaking. It's a vibration of the ship, I think. Or is it nerves? I don't know. There. And that is approach control there. In those days, it's recently ceased being the control tower. But from there, you've got a wonderful view of the whole airfield and all over all of London. And this is actually taken from an area called the Queen's Building here, where all the airline companies would be. And they would file their flight plans and so on. And indeed, the staff canteen was just down there. And we'd walk over from the tower. Whoops, what happened? That's my fault. We'd walk over from the tower and have a cup of coffee there. And it was great because you'd mingle with all the hostesses and the pilots and, buzz, and we could talk our aviation language and whatever. And there is it's like a big family, actually. Aviation, it's probably not so today, but in this era, you knew people. Oh, great, how did that trip to Gibraltar go, or whatever it was, You knew them. Okay, moving on to that, we then get to 1959. That's what's called a DC-4, a Sabina, piston engine aircraft still. But note, we have actually got Viscounts in the background here. Okay, I love the Viscount because we used to fly backwards and forwards to Ireland in it very regularly. And again, just to give you a flavour, 1960, what it was like. And then we get into the 70s, Tridents. British Airways, in fact, came out of 2 companies. BA, British European Airways, and BOAC, British Overseas Airways Corporation. And they were formed about this era, just after this picture, really, into what we now know as British Airways. But those are BEA aircraft, Tridents. Nice aircraft, very noisy, bit inefficient in fuel and all the rest of it. And, but it was a sort of stable diet for the British European Airways in those days. Now, that's the new tower, which was built about 6, 7 years ago now. Amazing. And of course, it's higher than the original one. It's not far from Terminal 5, but because of building Terminal 5 and extra aprons and, when you're up there, you need to obviously be able to see the whole airfield. You need to see if there's a dog at the end of the runway. And believe you me, that happens. Comes out of some estate and gets in. We once had a horse running around. It escaped out of a cargo aircraft and it was running around 28 left, the main runway. So you've got to have good vision up there. It was actually jacked up overnight. They built it, put all the cabling, they fixed the cabling up when it was jacked up. It was an overnight, they rolled it into position overnight, because obviously you had to switch. You imagine the task of switching from the old tower to the new and keeping everything running, right? Good technical stuff again. And that's a picture of it being jacked up. One of my ocean training students was one of the senior engineers responsible for doing that, so I heard a lot of the tales about it. And that's it there, with a few aircraft we're in Terminal 4, American Airlines, and so a nice British Airways aircraft there. That, of course, is Terminal 5. A lot of controversy with it. It's fine now. There's a nice feel to it. But millions upon millions of pounds spent on it. It's in that sewage farm area. So again, you've got the highwayman and the sewage farm. Why do I keep selling this stuff? I don't know. You want to just go and have a nice cup of coffee when you're there. But anyway, I like to tell the history. And wonderful building, really. Okay, that was just when it opened, sorry, Terminal 5. And that's give you an idea of the passenger hall there. Now, Terminal 5, as I told you, they spent millions on it. And they particularly concentrated in the conveyor belts for baggage. They spent, those alone were, there's belts everywhere. There's about 32 miles of conveyor belt in Terminal 5, right? Brilliant. However, the belts actually were designed to move a third faster than any other conveyor belt in the world. The only problem was they lost the bags faster. And in the first week, they lost 28,000 bags. So, it was bad press. I know that the airport authority, British Airports Authority, weren't pleased, and neither were the airlines, of course, and neither were the passengers, you can imagine. So it was great mayhem. But it's all sorted now, and it works pretty well. I go there quite regularly. Now, that's just to give you an idea. I'm not advertising the bank, but they certainly put money into their adverts there, the Terminal 5 jetties. Okay, and lovely to see that, I think. All those beautiful BA tails all lined up. You see that in all the airports, I'd love to be in Dulles or somewhere and see all these United aircraft lined up or whatever, or Dublin, all the Aer Lingus aircraft, It's nice to see the fleet, the base of the fleet. And of course, that's another nice view of a 747, taken in early this year. There's the new tower, okay, and obviously you can see how tight the apron, the parking areas are now. That's an early radar that I used to use, known as 264 radar, and you can see with that for about 70 miles out from Heathrow. And the whole country in those days had those. They've obviously got better than that now. But we always used to say, if you're about to get married and you don't want to have a family, and you want to get sterile, stand in front of one of them for 2 minutes, and that'll do the trick. Temporarily, for a few years anyway. I never tried it, and neither did my colleagues. That's the new tower. Sorry, beg your pardon. That's the new radar now. And we have, I won't go into all of this, we have what we call primary radar, which picks up that little echo you see on the screen. And we have secondary radar, which gives information on the aircraft, the type, the flight level, the speed, etc. And it all comes on a little tag. So that's the secondary scanner, and that's the primary, and that rides on the other one, really. Another nice picture there. Now, I wanted to show this for a particular reason. I actually took that picture when I was boarding an aircraft. And, of course, the aircraft are getting pretty heavy now. I mentioned the other day about when the first 707 appeared. And, now we're looking at Airbus A380s and all sorts. But when the heavier jets appeared, Heathrow in those wartime days was built of concrete blocks of about 2 meters square, right? And that was fine for the Lancasters and those early Pan-American aircraft that you saw and the piston engine, well, they were fine. But once this big stuff started coming, we had a big problem because as an aircraft came in, it hit the runway, well, hopefully, as we call it, they would grease it on. We also had a nice landing when you grease it on the runway, But of course, on a windy day, you're bumping, and you're getting, I don't know, about 250 tons of aircraft banging down on this concrete block. Over a period of time, the concrete blocks were getting banged down. So you have to take the whole runway out, get the contractors in, and remove the blocks. So you operate on one runway, because Heathrow's got 2 main runways. And I'll come back to that. So that's why I showed that particular one. And it meant that you've got to do all your landing and takeoffs on one runway. And we used to have to do a thing called gap and pack. Sounds awful, doesn't it? And what you'd do, you'd have a few aircraft landing, maybe 6, and then you'd have gaps so that you could get some departures, and meanwhile you were packing more behind arrivals. So, a bit of aerial juggling going on, but it worked. And during that period, I was monitored as the tower controller, had all these probes, like an ECG, something called Operation Heartbeat. And as it was all videoed as well and recorded, the sound, the voice, and it was videoed, and all the other people took all this stuff away and analysed it. And certainly when things got tight, you could see your heartbeat going up. That's the kind of aircraft, of course, now, the wonderful Airbus A380. And, of course, we've got the Boeing 787 coming in. Now, just to come back to the layout of Heathrow, I'll come here because you won't be able to understand all of that, but these are the two main runways now, okay? And you can see they're quite long. That's 12,799 feet, that one. And that one's 12,008 feet. And there you've got the landing lights. Sorry, the approach lights, the runway approach lights here and here and here and here. That's the aerial view of what it is. No, that's a little bit older. You'll notice this one has another runway there. That's gone now. It's all parking, taxiway and terminal buildings and things, and part of that Terminal 5. So we've only now actually got these two main drags, as we call them. All right? Now, I want to just explain this because this is to do with navigation and when you land an aircraft or take off, but particularly landing, you fly a magnetic heading. Now, there is a difference between a true course and a magnetic course. That's a topic in itself. But really, what I'm saying to you is that these are all magnetic. In other words, the magnetic North Pole is in the Hudson Bay area of Canada, but it does move over a period of time. In 70 years' time, it'll be over northern Russia. It's like a pendulum. It's what we call variation. But the true north is where the true North Pole is, actually. If you imagine a globe, it's the axis where the globe goes through. These runways are, that's how they are now. And that would be, if you're going, looking at this one here, okay, 27 right. We're going in a westerly direction, and if you look at a magnetic, any compass, 270 is going this way, all right? 09 is going the other way. So these runways are called according to their magnetic heading. So because this is in the direction of 270 going this way, we have 27 right and 27 left. Looking it around the other way, 09 left, 09 right. Okay? So that gives you an idea about that. By the way, there's the old tower and there's the new. We even put it on the runways just to make sure that pilots get it right. I'm joking. They know damn well which one they're coming in. But there are a lot of aviation jokes, some of which I've told to some friends I've met around the ship and people in the last few days. But there you go. That's the threshold of 27 right. So there was a time, actually, you know that cross runway I showed? There was a gasometer still there in Hayes or Southall, and it had an arrow with LHR written on it. And the reason was there's been a few aircraft who landed at Northolt when on their inbound to Heathrow. And the runway was a bit similar, so they landed there instead. So they painted on the top of this gas holder, which is on the approach to the old runway, an arrow, and LHR, London Heathrow. And that's gone. The writing's gone, but the gas thing's still there. Now, a bit about this. This is just to show you a picture of, that's the main runway there. It's actually 09 left and 27 right, which depending on which direction you're going. And that there means it's block Alpha 7. Okay? Now, if we look here, every section on the airfield is a block. Divide. There's Alpha 6, Alpha 7, da, da, da. I put that there. I couldn't actually put it on here, otherwise you wouldn't have seen the Alpha 7. So the Alpha 7 is there. So if there's an incident, and the fire vehicles, they would say, fire aircraft undercarriage or whatever, outer taxiway, Alpha 4, and they know exactly where to go. All right? There has to be an identification system. Right, we're going to now look at how does the air traffic control system work. That's one of my friendly Aer Lingus 737s, just going along the outer taxiway there to take off this way on this runway. How does it work? Well, we'll have a look.
Here at NATS, we provide air traffic control and navigation services to aircraft flying in UK-controlled airspace and over the eastern part of the Atlantic. Each year, we handle more than 2 million flights, carrying over 220 million passengers safely to their destinations. But how do we do it? How do we ensure the safety of such high volumes of traffic travelling in and out and over the UK? I like to think of it a bit like a highway network in the sky. Our airspace is crisscrossed with well-established airway corridors that we think of like roads. They're usually 10 miles wide and at least 5,000 feet high, and they run up and down and side to side across the UK. By using these sky roads, and by following tried and trusted navigational procedures, our air traffic controllers can ensure there is the required separation between aircraft, particularly where the airways cross. And that separation, keeping the distance between aircraft, well, that's the key to a safe operation. Let's look at an example. Say you were flying from Heathrow to San Francisco. Before you arrive at the airport, your airline have filed a flight plan detailing the route they would like the flight to take. NATS evaluates every flight plan, working with the airlines to consider factors like fueling, traffic patterns, and weather conditions to plan an optimum route. Once passengers are on board, the flight crew will speak to the ground and departure controllers, who sit in the airport tower, for directions onto the runway and then into the sky. Many people think that all air traffic controllers are located at airport towers. In fact, in the UK, the great majority are based at the NATS 2 custom-built facilities at Swanwick in Hampshire and Prestwick in Ayrshire, Scotland. Controllers in the airport tower are responsible for clearing aircraft to land and take off and for coordinating ground movements. But almost as soon as your flight is airborne from Heathrow, it will be passed over to a team of controllers based at Swanwick. NATS manages traffic through some of the most complex airspace in the world, covering area above southern England and the 5 London airports. In this busy area, all aircraft must be separated by at least 3 nautical miles in front and behind and to the sides, and 1,000 foot above and below. Planes taking off in this region are allocated a standard departure route before takeoff. As the aircraft leaves the London area, separation is increased to 5 nautical miles, and their progress is carefully monitored and directed by Swanwick until they reach the Scottish or oceanic airspace. Depending on the wind over the Atlantic, your Heathrow to San Francisco flight would then be guided north or west along defined airways through Scottish airspace, where the Prestwick team would take responsibility for your progress. Next, controllers at Prestwick, responsible for the oceanic airspace, would give you a clearance for your flight to be directed out onto the transatlantic airways. Prestwick controllers continue to monitor all flights over the ocean, where the aircraft must be separated by 10 minutes worth of distance between the aircraft in front and behind, and 60 nautical miles side to side. Finally, at 30 degrees west, Canadian air traffic controllers take over. So, that gets you out of the UK, but how do you get back? For the return flight, NATS would similarly assume responsibility at 30 degrees west and guide your plane right down to landing at Heathrow. The controllers at Swanwick stay in charge and manage your descent and any holding required before lining your aircraft for landing in the most efficient order possible. Safety is the #1 priority in everything NATS does. We manage traffic across a vast area, covering over 3 million square kilometres and an average of 6,000 flights each and every day of the year. NATS controllers are our most valuable resource for ensuring safety. Before ever speaking to an aircraft, controllers go through 2 to 3 years of training, which equips them to deal with any eventuality. Of course, their education doesn't stop at the end of the course. Controllers train throughout their career to keep their skills sharp and up to date with the latest technology and procedures. Our air traffic controllers are assisted by leading-edge systems and technology to enable them to make key decisions for the safe and efficient operation. That's this fusion of leading infrastructure, developed processes, and highly trained people keeps the Skyways network running smoothly and safely over the UK. So the next time you take off, remember the dedicated air traffic control team watching over you.
Okay, what I forgot to mention there, NATS is actually the National Air Traffic Services, but it is part of the civil aviation set up in the UK. And that's quite nice to show that because, there we go. Now, this is, very quickly, this is to give you an idea of the different systems. You have the tower, and they look after everything in and around the airfield, and then you have approach control that looks after everything mainly coming in from about 50 miles away, but it does, of course, look after outgoing aircraft and also what we call overflying aircraft. And then we have area control when the aircraft is in straight and level, and then obviously in the descent phase we have the reverse approach and back to the tower. Okay? Let's have a look at some of the worldwide air traffic functions. These are common to wherever you are in the system. First of all, aerodrome.